English students, this is Mrs. Peacock, and at this point we need to talk about the literary analysis essay. This type of essay analyzes a literary work by picking an aspect, so you could choose theme, tone, characters, symbolism, etc., and illustrating an argument for the reader using textual evidence, so that could be dialogue and/or a description. The writer should assume that the reader has read the work. The writer will prove a point without too much plot summary. If a part of the plot is summarized, it is to make a point for the overall argument. So if you find yourself just listing out the events of the story for the Cask of Amontillado, that's not exactly what I'm looking for. I want more analysis. I want to know what you thought of the short story specifically and your interpretation of it. So just make sure that you don't include any outside sources. This is just your thoughts about Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Cask of Amontillado. The link to the short story is in the Week 6 content folder, and there's also this informative video to help you out. The rough draft will be due Wednesday, February 21st by midnight in discussions. You'll do peer review on these rough drafts just like you have the other essays. And your final draft will be due Monday, February 26th by midnight in the content area of Blackboard. This essay is worth 20% of your average. Notice the length for this essay should be between 500 to 750 words in length. That's quite a bit shorter than that research paper, similar length to the descriptive narrative essay. The formatting is no surprise. It's 12-point Times New Roman font, double space with MLA heading and style. By this point, you guys have done enough MLA heading that you definitely understand how to do that. If you have any questions, let me know. The below topics are based on Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Cask of Amontillado. That is the only short story you're allowed to write on for this assignment, so make sure you don't turn in an essay about another short story. You could focus on the themes of this story. So if you haven't read the story, pause it here because I'm about to have some plot spoils for this short story. So some of the major themes for it, for those of you that have finished reading the short story, of course, murder. We have a murder at the end of the story. Revenge is a major theme within it. Literally, the very beginning of the story starts that he vows revenge against Fortunato. Also, deception. Montresor pretends to be the friend of Fortunato until he has him in his clutches. So definitely there's this theme of deception that goes throughout the story. So really it just depends on which themes you focus on, but I would recommend with a 5-paragraph essay to choose 3 themes to focus those 3 body paragraphs on. Another option would be tones the author utilizes. Edgar Allan Poe uses the same style in all of his stories. They're very dark and macabre and mysterious, and but if you choose the tone one, you would have to argue how he portrays tone. Is it the setting? Is it the dialogue? The types of character that he's using within the story? But you could focus on how the tone is established. There's also foreshadowing, and what I mean by foreshadowing is authors will provide hints on how their story is going to end. There's in here several instances where you know that there's going to be a murder. Honestly, by the end, it's not quite so much of a shock because he's literally shown us the murder weapon with the trowel, and he begins the story with revenge. So you know that Montresor has a revenge plot in the future for Fortunato. Notice with the toast, whenever he says, "I shall not die of a cough," and then Montresor says, "True, true." He knows how he's going to die. He's already plotted his murder. And so there's so many instances, and those are just scratching the surface. But for the foreshadowing essay, you would choose 3 instances of foreshadowing that you saw as a reader and what they made you think about the story overall. There's also protagonists and antagonists, and protagonists are the heroes and antagonists are villains. And really these 2 characters, we only have 2 characters within the story. They reference Lucchese as a competitor for Fortunato as a wine connoisseur, but Lucchese is not actually in the story. So we only have 2 characters to work with. But you could argue which one is the protagonist and which one's the antagonist. Of course, the clear-cut version would be that Montresor is the villain and Fortunato is the victim. But we don't know really what happened to make Montresor want to vow revenge. We don't truly know if Fortunato did something that was so egregious to warrant a revenge. And so it's really open to interpretation, which is one reason why I really enjoy the story, because different students will get different interpretations on which characters are the villain and which one's the victim. For symbolism, that is when an item stands in for an idea. So for instance, roses are usually symbolic of love, skulls are symbolic of death, and we have a ton of symbols within this story. Of course, they're in a crypt, so they're surrounded by bones, which are always symbolic of death. We also get the trowel itself, which becomes a murder weapon, also kind of a symbol of things are not always as they seem, because a simple shovel can be used to brick a man up in the wall. So nothing is as it seems in the story, but I think you guys understand essentially it's when an item represents an idea. So you would choose 3 symbols and establish what you think those symbols stood for within the story and within this plot. As always, I have that final draft late submission rule, so just make sure you turn in your final drafts by the 26th and you won't have to worry about having any points taken off. Also, all of your final drafts are going to be graded using the same grading rubric that I've used for the last few essays, so there's no surprise there, and they're also scanned with anti-plagiarism software. Like I said earlier, make sure you don't use any outside sources for this essay. Solely use your own interpretation of the story, because if you do use an outside source and then don't cite it, you will be plagiarizing. And of course, there's going to be a million interpretations of this short story online, but I would much rather know what you thought of it individually. I want to get your own unique thoughts and ideas versus you just citing SparkNotes. Trust me, I've read plenty of SparkNotes about this, so I want to just get your interpretation of the story. Don't forget, we have a fantastic writing center with tutors that can help you as well, and I'm always here to answer questions as needed. So let me know if you have any questions, and have a wonderful day.